Everybody, welcome to SoundBalming. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of the show,
Lamar Darnell Shields.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of the day it is. Welcome to my show. I am your host, Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields, the creator of SoundBalming. And my goal with this show is to introduce you to people with ideas that will help you unlock your full potential. And speaking of potential, I know it's been a long time since I've been on the airways. The potential has been super, super high. The last couple of days, I had the opportunity to work with some amazing young people all over the state of Maryland, starting out with the amazing young men at a school in Prince George's County, Catherine T. Reed. These young boys were amazing. They were phenomenal. And if you're following me, you saw the jackets. They got their jackets yesterday. They were jacketed. These were 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. I worked with them along with one of my former students, Sananda Edwards. 16 weeks with a group of young men. I'm telling you, they were amazing. They were African and African-American boys. That was such a beautiful mix. And then today on the campus of Loyola College in Maryland, my alma mater, one of the 4 schools I attended, and I had not been back there since the early 2000s. I'd never gone back to the campus because I had some issues with what was going on. And I was invited by my good friend, Dr. K. Wise Whitehead, who's been on my show on several occasions, who's a great thinker, leader, thought leader, and she created an institute named after her dad. And today was her second year anniversary. And I was invited to work with another group of young people, middle school, high school, and some college students around social justice issues. It was a very racially diverse group, mainly males. I don't know why I was heavy on the male tip, but it was great. And we talked about social justice. We talked about some of the leaders in the movement, and we talked about what leadership is. And so today is befitting that we're going to be talking about that, because the journey to becoming a great leader, I know, requires a willingness to identify opportunities for improvement and implement new practices that enhance relationships with staff members, with team leaders, to then hopefully to increase your organizational performance. One of the things that we talked about today was the qualities of a great leader, and not only just leaders of color, not only just women leaders or LGBTQ plus leaders, but just leaders in general. And what we discovered and what we discussed is strong quality leaders must have qualities, but the best leaders lead by examples. You know, strong quality leaders must have many qualities, but the best leaders lead by example. And finding one's purpose in life and always striving for that purpose, whether it be at work, outside of work, is an example that many great leaders project onto the people they lead. Well, my next guest knows this story too well. She is a leadership speaker who shares how to grow from being a high potential leader to one who leads at the top of their game. She is the author of Lead at the Top of Your Game. She's a leadership speaker whose speaking engagements are one-of-a-kind experiences that give people a rock-solid foundation to explore how their differentiating strengths shine in today's new world of work. She is the founder of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global human capital professional service firm that helps corporations execute business critical people learning and culture initiative. Who am I talking about? Karan Ferrell Rhodes to the SoundBalming studio. Karan, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you doing? And let my listeners know where you are calling in from.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Shields. I am super honored and excited to be here, and I'm calling in from Atlanta, Georgia.
I hear that Atlanta, Georgia accent. Is it warm down there?
It is warm. It is picnic weather in Atlanta right now.
So my son was just there last week on a tour with 90 students. They went from Florida to Georgia, and they went on a college tour. And you can only imagine where he got the most excited. The AU Center, Atlanta, Clark Atlanta, Morehouse Spelman. They also went on the Morris Brown. This boy came back talking about everything. And I'm so excited that he wants to go to Morehouse, the school that I wanted to go to, but my mama did not have the money to put me through. Karen, after sending 4 of us to private school, I was not surprised that she did not have the resources to get me there, but I did go into some other schools. So I'm very familiar with your city and your state. And let's do a wellness check-in. As a leader, we always got to check in right before we start the work.
Absolutely.
Let us know. So we're going to use the seasons. There are 4 seasons. I don't know if y'all have 4 seasons in Georgia.
We do.
We're getting it I remember y'all had a snowstorm like 3 years ago. It was like, yeah, we only have 1 shovel for the entire city. And I remember watching it. So we're just going to do a check-in using the seasons, not seasoning salt. Okay. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Where are you today on April 13th?
I am in the spring
And why?
season right now.
Why?
Because my team and I are launching a lot of big initiatives that we planted the seeds for last year, and they are blooming like crazy. So I will say I'm in the season of spring.
All right. And some amazing new things you're going to be sharing with us on this interview that you can let us know about?
I definitely will. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm so excited and honored that you decided to hang out with me today. As I said, I work today with a bunch of young people, middle school, high school, and college student, Karen, who are some budding leaders. I know in our generation, many of us were supposed to be seen and not heard. And I never really understood that because they want us to become these leaders. And when I looked at most of the leaders across the globe, not only just civil rights activists, you're being in Georgia, one of the greatest, Dr. King, and of course, his wife, Coretta Scott King. But these were young people. These were young people who were leading. Now, to us, Karen, they looked old. Like you never saw Dr. King in a jogging suit, never rocking a Yankee hat. And when I looked at them, they were young, like we were, but they seemed much older. Talk to me about your start when it comes to being a leader. We're going to get into some of the new stuff, but what inspired you to want to focus on leadership? Was it something in your young age? Were you sitting in a class when you saw somebody? Were you a Girl Scout? You a Brownie? Were you a debutante? What was it about you getting early excited about leadership?
Yes, great question. I will say that the person who most influenced me was my father. He was the epitome of a person who was leading at their top of their game. I always said my dad was like a big fish in a small pond. We grew up in a smaller town in Georgia, but he was one of those people that everybody knew. He was a mentor and advisor to everyone. He was sought after. Politicians always invited him to coffee and tea because he was the heartbeat of the community. So he inspired me along with his friends. So I will say just really quickly, because my dad was such a strong personality and individual, he surrounded himself with similar type of people, similar type of men of color who had each other's back, who brainstormed, who talked about a lot of things. And I was a daddy's girl. So I always hung around him and I would sit at the end of the table and be very quiet. But I've always been a person that has loved watching the dynamics of people. And I studied my dad and what I'll call his super team of strategic supporters. I watched them work and I watched the influence that they're making. And I early on in life identified that that's what I wanted to be. And they did a nice balance of assimilating into the environment and being respected, while also having a little spice in being glass ceiling breakers, if you will. And that says a lot for the Deep South back in the day.
Yes, it does. I'm smiling from ear to ear because I love hearing girls, and I'm not calling you a girl, girls and women.
I'll take the girl.
Talk about their father. I have 2 children. And when I hear girls and women talk about their dad, it's my hope that when my girls are away from me and my son, that they say very similar things, because my goal is to be an example of what manhood, of what fatherhood really is. Not nowhere perfect, but just be an example. So that was really, really good to hear, because today, when I was talking to the young people, several of the young people, when we talked about heroes, because Dr. K created this leadership institute named after her dad, who she loved and who she revered, just like you, who she spent a lot of time with, so much that he created a name because he thought she was going to be a boy, very similar to his name. And she shared that story today. And so a young man talked about his mother being his hero, his father being his hero. When you think that young people look up to so many other people, it feels good to hear that. So I'm excited that you're here. Karan, last week, I had the honor of hosting a live conversation with 5 of the dopest women, I think, on the planet. You probably would have been number 6 in that room. And these were women who were running school systems, school districts. These were women who were managing $25 million budgets. We're talking about the superintendent from New Orleans. We're talking about a superintendent in South Bend, an assistant superintendent, one in Maryland. Just some amazing ladies. And I had an opportunity just to ask them a bunch of questions about what does it mean to lead? What does it mean to lead during this time, especially when the energy is just so male dominated? We say that this is the time of the woman, but I feel like it's always been, in my eyes, that you guys were always leading. But I also discovered from them that they've had somewhat of these self-limiting beliefs that they had to overcome as a woman, as a female amongst a group of men, as a leader. And we're going to get to your work, because I think it's important for us to know sort of who you are. I think you and I, we do this work all over, and people see us, but they don't see or know the things we've gone through. What, Karan, was some beliefs, self-limiting beliefs that you had to overcome in order to be where you are right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Now, I will say, and this goes back to my dad being the superstar in my eyes, he always brought me up saying that there was not a person on this earth who was smarter or better than I was. However, he was a realist and said, but I needed to make sure that I was bringing my best self to the table at all times. And that means knowledge-wise, being prepared, being able to articulate a certain point of view and having the backup for it. So he, really instilled that in me. But having said that, in the real world, you do face obstacles as you're rising through the leadership ranks, no matter your area of specialty. The industries that most of my career was in, it was male dominated. So engineering, technology, communications, energy, and oil and gas, all of those are male dominated. So I will admit that I had a bit of imposter syndrome as I got to some of the executive ranks, thinking, do these individuals know more than I do? Or how do they have more influence than I do? Can I compete as a woman of color? But you know what? That little seed that Dad planted in my brain always came to rise and say, you know what? Yes, you can, as long as you bring your best self. And I just made sure I tried to overachieve in bringing my best self to the table. And 90% of the time it worked. And the 10% of the time it didn't. I took those learnings to prepare for the next time around.
I love it. So since you brought up working with and being around this sort of male dominated field, you definitely brought up some fields where typically you all are the minority. Well, with that being said, have you experienced resistance when you're leading men? And if so, how have you handled that?
Yes, it does happen quite frequently, but I'm a relationship person. I'm very, as you can probably tell, very chatty. I'm an excellent reader of individuals, and usually I'm able to find an area of commonality at some point as I'm listening to their story and what they're prioritizing, where we can relate. And little by little, I try to chip away at their hesitancy or resistance over time. So I try to earn the right to be heard by them, because if I was just walking down the street, they probably wouldn't seek out my guidance or, my perspective. But when you're able to build a bridge between you and an individual, then sometimes then they're a little bit more open. And then over time, you gain that confidence and respect to the point that they won't make a move without you. And that's what I love. I love to see that evolution. So I chuckle in the back of my mind and say, hey, you didn't want to work with me at first, but now, we're almost best buds. So,
Well, speaking of building bridges, let's talk about leadership.
Sure.
Describe your leadership style and how you lead others. What makes your style very different and unique? I know you created the leadership program.
Yeah.
I've looked at many of your interviews. Girl, you got so much stuff all over the place. It was like overload of information. And I was like, when am I going to have time to read? I got 90 kids I got to talk to tomorrow, 30 to the next day, and they all need my attention. And so when you talk about styles, I discovered my style was different from the people that I was working with. So describe your leadership style and how do you lead others?
So my personal leadership style is very collaborative in nature. I feed off of individuals' perspectives. I call my superpower strategic ideation, and that's all about thinking in a big world of possibilities, but then very quickly narrowing it down to what options are the most feasible. That's what I'm able to frequently bring to the table. And leaders in general seem to love that, because they want to, think about when they're faced with the issue in their workplace, they want to know kind of what are all the options, and then they want to quickly get to, okay, what are the most feasible ones, which are the ones that have the least calculated risk. So that's how I personally lead. When I've led teams of up to 300 in my larger organization, and I've led teams as small as 5 individuals. But I try to treat everyone as a person of one, and to really understand them one-to-one before we try to tackle any initiatives together, because I need to know what's top of mind for them, what gifts and talents they're bringing to the table, so I can best help them shine in whatever we're working on together. So collaboration is really big for me. But my area of specialty that I try to teach about is on leadership execution, that sliver of leadership, because in general, companies and employers and associations and organizations do a pretty good job in teaching you the nuts and bolts of leadership, like how to create a vision, how to have executive presence, those individual skills they do a good job of, but we don't do such a good job of helping you take it and fold it into your everyday life. How do you make it real, for yourself? How do you take all that you've learned and make it work when you're in the midst of chaos and trying to lead yourself? And because of that, that's why I chose to try to help people take all that leadership knowledge to the extra mile, the last mile, and making it happen in whatever it is they're doing.
What are some of the critical factors that get in the way of leadership? Some things that are impeding their success as a leader, as you observe leaders across the globe, be it politically, academic, socially, athletic? What are some things that are getting in the way of their success?
Well, everyone's an individual, and that list is different based on who you're, talking about or working with or what have you. But in general, some success inhibitors are those who are not open to diverse perspectives. And when I say diverse perspectives, I mean, everyone, every shape or form. Is not just focused on race or demographic type of differences. It's really thought perspectives, not bringing those to the table. Some individuals over rely on their leadership style. So if your natural leadership style is very dominant, it may isolate those who dominance is not doesn't work best with their styles. So over relying on your style and not doing things that welcome others that have different styles is a big leadership inhibitor as well. But the actual particular ones really depend upon who it is that you're working with. And that's what as a leadership coach, you try to work with them to identify exactly what those are and then go deep into that. And that's what some of the research that we commissioned helps do.
Now, I know I've led, just like you, I've led several groups, organizations, young people and old people who act like young people. And quite often, what I've discovered, each group is very, very different. I'm an artist, so I sort of bring that level of artistry to my client. I want to give people an experience. I explain to my students that I work with, I want it to be like a performance. But quite often I do get stuck, and I'm sure you get stuck. What do you do when you are creatively stuck in engaging an organization and or an individual to get over that hump or whatever that is?
Then I seek experts that may have knowledge that I may not. That's when.
Now, which experts are we talking? We talking about going to the Pope, going to the Imam, to the like which experts you referring to?
I'll go to anyone. But being in this field, I naturally have different groups. I'm part of quite a few leadership think tanks with individuals like the Center for Creative Leadership. We work with folks at Gallup. Those that are big names that have leadership think tanks. Being with the former Fortune 50 firm, you doors are opened to influencers, and so I always kept up those networks. So I know quite a few people, both those in academia, those who actually have are practitioners. I'll tap on individuals who are experts in different areas to bounce ideas off. And like I said, my leadership style is very collaborative. So I have no shame saying, hey, I'm having these initial ideas, but I'm still a little stuck, want to bounce a few things off of you. And most of the times people do respond, and they'll, generate new sparks or bring new data that I had never even thought of.
That's a great perspective, because a lot of people, Karan, won't admit that. A lot of people think that they have all the answers and they should have all the answers. Then also a lot of people don't give credit to the people that said, you know what, this is how you should do it. I have what I call like some OGs that's been doing it for years. They may not have the energy as much as I have, but they still got that insight. It's like that grandmother, grandfather who you might think they're 100 years old, but they can hear everything that's in the house. Everybody that's moving. And so I too reach out to those individuals to ask for support and ask for help. And I remember reaching out to an individual I won't mention because they're sort of close to where you are. I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay.
And they were like, I called someone. They was like, "Ooh," that was the first thing that they said. They were like, "Ooh, they still at it again." So I said, "Hey, listen, we are working. We are not about to I got 3 children in school, so I don't know what that woo means, but I need to get through it because I need this check coming in. And I enjoy what I do." But they did give me some insight on some history, some things that I didn't know that had nothing to do with the directors that were there now, but a spirit that was in that space. You can call it spirit, you can call it energy, you can call it history that was in that space that they thought that had shifted. And so I definitely listened to them. And then my partner and I came back. We went into the locker room. We wrote up some different plays. And so we came out swinging and fighting and ready to go for it. But I think a lot of us, we don't do that enough, Karen, reach out to people in our circle, because I think the expectation is we're supposed to know everything. You are a parent. I'm a parent. I have a network of parents like, hey, listen, I just need to ask you a question. I want to know if this is normal or abnormal or what's happening. But is your kid doing X, Y, and Z? And they was like, oh, thank you for asking me. I thought I was the only one that was going through this. Because I'm like you, very transparent, very collaborative. And I think that that's why I have been very successful in my work, because I am very open to listening to people that have some direction, but then also people who respect my work and how I deliver it. And they may deliver it in a different manner. And so what I like about you, and I'm enjoying about you from what I'm read and listen to podcasts, you really, really enjoy your work and what you do. Now I want you to share with us, what do you enjoy about your work?
Oh my goodness. You know what? If I didn't have to pay the light bill, I'd do it for free. I'll be honest with you. I absolutely enjoy. I love being the consigliere behind people. So they're the leader behind the leader, because everyone needs someone to bounce ideas off and think through. There's not a single person that I've found that leads at the top of their game that does not have a confidant or a thought partner, or someone that is in the shadows but helps them be successful. And I absolutely love that role, because I enjoy I enjoy thriving myself, and I enjoy to see others thriving. And the best way that I thrive is because I love rolling my sleeves up and collaborating with individuals. That is just like the world. It means the world to me. And I love to see others shine. And I have my own coach, and tells me I have to get from behind, the persons and do what I can do to make my own self shine. But I absolutely love leadership execution. And to be honest with you, there have been very few negative things in the world of work that haven't been traced back to some part of bad leadership. And people are impacted about that. They're losing, a bad move may cause a loss of jobs. It may cause stress for individuals in the workplace. It may affect someone's mental well-being. And if we can do a better job in helping leaders be the best that they can be, that will save people from going through and experiencing the bad side of leadership. And so in my own way, that's what I'm trying to advocate for, a better workspace and mental well-being for everyone that's involved in work and business.
Well, I know you've taken all that information that you have in your head and in your hands, and you wrote a book called Lead at the Top of Your Game.
Yes.
How to deliver compelling influence, drive, differentiating value, and build an impeccable leadership brand. Now, what's interesting about this book and the cover, you have some chess pieces that are on the cover. Before we get into the inspiration of the book, talk to me about the design. If people really, they may or may not see the book, but talk to me about the cover design. Then let's get into the story behind writing this book.
Oh, thank you for noticing. Well, yeah, so the cover of the design has black chess pieces on a chessboard, but it has the king that is multicolored and it's splashing around. And so the significance of that creation was that, number one, I love collaborating, and most leaders who are leading at the top of the game, they're playing chess, not checkers. When everybody else is playing checkers, they're playing chess. Not only that, they're doing it in a very dynamic way that stands out, that's making impact, that's meaningful to both themselves and others, and that aligns with their values. And so through that image, that's what I was trying to convey.
I love the image. I love the color. Talk about the inspiration of the book and how can my listeners get a copy of the book?
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, it definitely is on Amazon or any book retailer that you grab your books from. So it's very easy to find. It's also, you can go on my website, shockingly-different.com. You will see our signature leadership program that features the research of the book. All you have to do is click there, and there's a ton of materials and information on how you can get the book and other things as well. But the inspiration of the book, as I said, I decided a long time ago I wanted to help people execute better. And this came out of when I helped to create the Global High Potential Leadership Program for Microsoft. That was my last big corporate gig before starting the firm. And what we found through that, our initial research, was there are a lot of areas of leadership competencies that employees needed, and we actually taught on those. But when I talked to individuals at the end of their experience, they always said, yeah, this is good, but it's really tough when we have to roll it back into our day-to-day roles. And that always stuck with me. And after I started the firm, I decided to work with a research group and commission a research study to try to understand how to solve for that problem for individuals. So what we were trying to solve for was, what were the world's most successful individuals or leaders doing that was so different than 95% of the rest of the population? How did they get to rise to the level of their game that others didn't? And when you talk to the individuals, they'll even admit, there are quite a few others that they know that are maybe smarter than them or more dynamic personality-wise than them. But I wanted to determine, okay, what actions, behaviors did they do that was different from the norm? And so, long story short, we surveyed over 10,000 high-performing leaders and organizations of all sizes, across all industries and across the globe. Talk about that network. I leveraged my network to get into some of those companies to get to their people for them to participate in the research study. But out of that, we identified over 100 actions, behaviors, factors, tactics, if you will, that individuals reported doing on a consistent basis. But what was interesting was there was a clear line of demarcation in the top 7 that I write about in the book. And what was even more interesting about the top 7 is they applied no matter your career stage, whether you were at an employer or owned your own business, no matter what industry you were in. And so we thought, wow, if we could double down on these 7 and teach those, then, or to help develop those, then we could dramatically increase the probability of leaders being successful in their environments. And so that's what we doubled down and did. So I will share that these 7 are tactics. Tactics are actions that folks did. But I do want to say that underneath each of the tactics, there are what we call sub-competencies that someone can learn to help bolster their acumen in the tactic. Now, I won't go into the sub-tactics. That's, really deep. But just know that there's meat behind each of these actions that the world's most successful leaders did. The first one they did is that they led with what we call intellectual horsepower. And leading with intellectual horsepower is all about leveraging your knowledge in your area of expertise and to what I call peek around corners and look for trends and data and information that others miss. So if you're able to come to the table and bring new information in your area of expertise to those that matter, then you're going to definitely differentiate yourself as a leader and be considered valued. So that was the first one. The second tactic was leading with courageous agility. And courageous agility is all about having the courage and the fortitude to doing what's right, even if the future is unclear. So the strongest leaders were able to have the courage to stand up for what they believed in based on data, information, and their personal values, and not be closed off to everyone, but stand up for it and advocate for it, even if you're unsure if your audience or decision makers will immediately agree. But those who were able to step on that, to the line, have those rich conversations, exchange those ideas, and make the world a better place because of that, those are the ones who stood out. The third one was leading with strategic decision making. And that's not brain surgery, it's just what it is. It's all about making good decisions yourself or leading a good decision making process with others that you're collaborating with. So those who were able to do that also were leading at the top of their game. The fourth one is leading with intrapreneurship. And intrapreneurship is similar to entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship focuses on bettering one's products, services, or offerings or processes within the environment that you're working in. So intrapreneurs usually have a company, an agency, a nonprofit organization, some kind of working environment that's already structured. And so you're looking to improve on the products, services, processes within that organization. The difference between entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship is that entrepreneurs frequently are going at it alone. They don't have the infrastructure that an established organization has, but they're still trying to do their thing, if you will. But if you're able to bring value within that organization and bring new ideas to the table for improvements, those are what some of the best leaders did as well. And so I'll quickly roll off the last three. The next one is leading with a drive for results. Having a drive for results is being very tenacious about getting and achieving your end goal, even if you have to pivot or course correct, because leaders are rewarded for helping shepherding their people or their teams to an eventual goal. And so those who were able to get to that end goal were definitely thought well of and rewarded. The sixth tactic was leading with executive presence. And the way we define executive presence is that you're able to deliver clear and convincing oral or written perspectives or arguments in order to convince others and gain their buy-in. So those who have that grit, that data, and can present it in a way that's extremely compelling, that people want to raise their hands and say, yeah, I want to follow Dr. Lamar to wherever he takes me. That's what executive presence does. And then the last tactic that the successful leaders, all of them did, was they led with what we call stakeholder savvy. And stakeholder savvy is the sister tactic to the skill of having emotional intelligence, but it's all about relating and getting to know those that you are working with, collaborating with, or talking to. Or if you own your own business, it's getting to understand your target audience or target clients and speaking to them in a way that's meaningful to both them and yourself, and being able to also pivot when you need to. So for example, if you're a salesperson, there's some situations where you just want to build relationships with your prospect. And so you'll need a great deal of, conversational knowledge and active listening to better understand them. But then there are other times when you're going to have to switch and pivot when you're trying to close the deal. And you're going to be, working with a strong drive for results. And so you're going to be focused on, what do I need to say for them to say, yes, I'm ready to write a check and support you. So that flexibility and knowing how to show up in different ways is stakeholder savvy. So those are the 7.
I love the 7 tactics. All right. So Karan, I know you have this amazing book out. You talked about the book, but you also have a firm where you actually train, work, and develop leaders. how could my listeners who are interested in working with you, working with your other consultants, how can they work with you? What are some things that they need to do? And what type of people are you usually working with?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for asking. We actually have 3 divisions at Shockingly Different Leadership. We do human resources consulting, learning and development consulting, and organizational effectiveness consulting. We like to say that we consult on the people side of business, on the strategic side of the people side of business. So the firms that we usually work with, now we don't do payroll and things like that, but if you're undergoing some major change initiatives, if you're realigning, if you need interim support, like an interim HR director or an interim curriculum designer, things like that, those are the types of specialties that we offer. We also work very heavily with private equity firms with their portfolio companies. So we help them build up their HR infrastructures and also help coach their leaders as they get ready for acquisition or buyout. So if you go to shockingly.com, we even have a quick search area where, depending upon what your needs are, you can click a button, it will filter, and you'll show all the list of services that are applicable for you.
Well, people, I want to tell you, I've read everything about her that was sent to me, and they can add a lot of value to you as an individual. They can also add a lot of value to your organization. And of course, we know as researchers, you have to have an outside eye to look in to see what you're doing. And it's also good to have somebody who's cool and fun and who's intelligent that will give you an opportunity to not only just rebuild, restructure, but to keep doing some of the amazing things that you're doing. So I'm telling you, check out the work that they're doing at their organization. And so I appreciate the great energy that you brought to my show today.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
How can my listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at shockingly.com on the website. I live on LinkedIn, so please, I invite you to connect and reach out. Also on all the other social media channels, but the fastest way is via the web or on LinkedIn.
And I would like to thank Supremacy for our theme music and all of you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, stop being stingy, and share us with all of your friends. If you want to know more about me, go to drlds.com. And as I always believe, there's something wonderful is about to happen, and that some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess, but not you. Listen, if you like this episode, I'm sure you do, please subscribe. Thanks a lot, Karen. Take care.